The Great Builder, a Scandinavian myth. Ages ago, when the world was first made, the gods decided to build a beautiful city high above the heavens, the most glorious city that ever was known. Asgard was its name, and it stood on Ida Plain under the shade of Yggdrasil, the great tree whose roots were underneath the earth. They built houses for all the Aesir, the Norse gods. They saved Father Odin's palace for last, for they meant this to be the largest and the most splendid of all. Gladsheim was the name of Father Odin's house. The house was built all of gold, set in the midst of a wood where the trees had leaves of rose gold, like an autumn gilded forest. For the safety of all Father, it was surrounded by a roaring river and a high fence. A happy life it was for all who lived in Asgard. But then the trouble began. From the beginning of time, the giants had been unfriendly to the Aesir. They were jealous because the good Aesir were gaining more wisdom and power than the giants. It was the Aesir who set the fair brother and sister, sun and moon, in the sky to give light to the men. And it was they who made the jeweled stars out of sparks from the place of fire. The giants hated the Aesir and tried to injure them and the men of earth below, whom the Aesir loved and cared for. Between Asgard and the giants flowed Ifing, the great river over which the gods had built the Rainbow Bridge. But this was not protection enough. Their beautiful new city needed a fortress. So the word went forth in Asgard, we must build ourselves a fortress against the giants, the biggest, strongest, finest fortress that ever was built. One day there came a mighty man stalking up the Rainbow Bridge that led to Asgard city. "Who goes there?" cried Heimdall the watchman. "I am builder of strong towers," said the stranger. "I have heard that the folk of Asgard need someone to help them raise a fair fortress in their city." Heimdall looked at the stranger narrowly, for there was something about this man that he did not like. He blew on his golden horn, and all the Aesir came running to the Rainbow Bridge. "Truly he is a mighty figure," said Father Odin, looking at him approvingly. "How long will it take you alone to build our fortress? We can allow but one stranger at a time within our city, for safety's sake." "In 3.5 years," replied the stranger, "I will build for you a castle so strong that not even the giants could enter." "Aha!" cried Father Odin, well pleased at this offer. "And what reward do you ask, friend, for help so timely?" "I ask you to give me Freya for my wife, and those 2 sparkling jewels, sun and moon." At this demand the gods looked grave, for Freya was their dearest treasure. She was the most delightful young woman the kingdom had ever known, and if she should leave Asgard, joy would go with her. Sun and moon were the light and life of those who lived below. Then Loki, a shapeshifter and troublemaker, said, "Mighty man, we will agree to your price, upon one condition. You must finish the fort without help in 1 winter, and you shall have Freya with sun and moon. But if, on the first day of summer, even 1 stone is missing from the walls, or if anyone has helped you in the construction, then your reward is lost, and you shall depart without payment." The stranger agreed as long as the Aesir would let his horse help him. Then he set to work. His strength seemed as the strength of 100 men. As for his horse, Svadilfori, he did more work by half than even the mighty builder. Svadilfari dragged the enormous rocks that were to be used in building the castle. In the daytime, the stranger piled them into place with his iron arms. The Aesir watched him with amazement. Never was such strength seen in Asgard. Freya trembled in her palace, and sun and moon grew dim with fear. Finally, only the gateway remained to be completed, and unless the stranger should fail to finish that in the next 3 days, the Aesir would be obligated to give him Freya, sun, and moon. The Aesir held a meeting upon Ida Plain, a meeting full of fear and anger. At last they realized they had made a bargain with one of the giants, their enemies. If he won the prize, it would mean sorrow and darkness in Asgard and upon Earth. "If it wasn't for the deal I made, this never would have happened," Loki cried, "and I shall make sure the builder does not finish that gate." On the last night of winter, there remained but a few stones to put in place on the top of the gateway. The giant was sure of his prize and chuckled to himself as he went out with his horse to drag the remaining stone. He did not know that the Aesir had guessed his identity. Hardly had he gone to work when out of the wood ran a pretty little mare, who neighed to Swadofori, inviting the horse to play in the green fields. Swadofori, tired of dragging stones, ran off after the mare toward the grassy meadows. The mare who raced ahead was Loki in disguise, and he led Swadofori to a hidden meadow. The giant howled and panted up and down all night long, without catching even a sight of his horse. When morning came, the gateway was still unfinished, and winter had ended. The giant's time was over, and he had forfeited his reward. The Aesir came flocking to the gateway and laughed when they found 3 stones missing from the gate. "You have failed, fellow," said Father Odin sternly. "Leave Asgard quickly." In this extraordinary way, the noble city of Asgard was made safe and complete by the addition of a fortress that no one, not even the giant who built it, could destroy.